Welcome once again. This is Dr. Greg Hall with Better Black Health, brought to you by Genetic Sequence Multivitamins. Multivitamins tailored specifically for African Americans. Today, we're going to talk to a psychologist, Dr. Reginald Blue. Dr. Blue, thanks so much for joining us today.
Hey, not a problem. Happy to do so.
Absolutely. So now, you know, Valentine's Day is coming up. February is Black History Month, but it also has Valentine's Day, which some people is the bane of their existence. Others, it's the happiest day of their lives. So with Valentine's Day coming up, what sort of advice do you have overall in terms of relationship support? What should you go out to dinner for Valentine's Day, or should you stay home, or should you make a big deal out of it? What do you think?
I leave it up to the couples that are involved.
All right, you're going to plead the fifth on that.
I'm
right?
going to plead the fifth on that because there's some people that it's an important day. They want they have certain kinds of expectations with it, and there are others that's not the case. And there's not a cookie cutter kind of response to that. Individuals who are involved, they should work it out, and unless one of the people is asking to do something that is just totally against the other person, go with the flow.
Go with the flow, yeah. Well, that's good advice. You know, and that's also true of people with birthdays. Some people think their own birthday is like Christmas, right?
Oh.
And that their relationship partner should make a huge deal out of their birthday, maybe even when their relationship partner doesn't make a big deal with their own birthday. So how is that just a total mismatch, or is it's certainly a setup for failure, isn't it?
It depends on how you approach it.
Okay.
Because if you know that the person expects gigantic kinds of things and you know this going in, again, go with the flow.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the person who is expecting these kinds of things needs to recognize what kind of person is it they're in this relationship with and how they're going to respond. And again, go with the flow.
Right.
You know, I'm not in favor of they should discover it.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
right.
they should just come to me and, you know, and do all these wonderful things.
Mm-hmm.
If you want something, speak up.
Yeah, ask for it, right?
Yeah, say what you want.
Right. I'd like you to make a big deal about my birthday, right?
Exactly.
Don't just want them to spontaneously. I remember when I was, 10 or 11, and I'm the youngest of 5, and my mother and father completely forgot my birthday. And I walked around, kind of moped around all day. No one wished me a happy birthday. No one had said anything. It was like 4 in the afternoon, but of course it seemed like an eternity.
Of course.
And my mother, then she got all mad. How dare you not tell me it was your birthday?
It's your fault.
Yeah, it was my fault. So it was like my least happy birthday. I got in trouble for keeping quiet about my own birthday. But the moral of the story is, if you want something, don't set the other person up for failure. Say, my birthday's coming up. I love my birthday, and I want to do something special and do that together, right?
Exactly.
Because if you want someone to spontaneously be thoughtful, that might not necessarily happen.
And everybody is not as spontaneous as other people expect them to be. We are who we are. Some of us are much more creative than other folk are. If you don't want to be disappointed, speak up.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the best thing. So, talking about relationships, so that is everyone supposed to be in a relationship?
Not supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
We're gregarious by nature.
Mm-hmm.
We are involved one way or another, generally speaking. Mm-hmm. But again, there are those of us who don't necessarily want to be involved the way other people want us to be involved.
Mm-hmm. And they're perfectly happy, is what you're saying.
Absolutely.
And I know that my mother years ago would say, "So and so, oh, they don't have any children." but the reality is they didn't want any children.
Exactly.
It's not nothing to be sad about, right? And so-and-so's never been married. Well, the reality is they never wanted to be married.
Exactly.
They're perfectly happy the way they are, but we want to put our expectations, on them.
Exactly. And that's problematic
Mm-hmm.
because we should not put our expectations on other folk. People are who they are.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody shows up in any kind of relationship that you want to talk about with their own baggage.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Right.
what's in that baggage? We do not know why things are in that particular baggage. We do not know. We don't know what their history has been. So if you're in an intimate relationship and you think it's going somewhere, now we need to talk.
Mm-hmm.
Now we need to be open and honest with one another about what is and what we can talk about and why you feel this is this way or this is that way or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But generally speaking, we're back to that communication thing.
Right.
Speak up.
Right. But, so there's, there are differences between men and women and how they feel about opening up. I remember when we first got married, my wife, she asked me, well, what are you thinking about? And I was like, I'm not thinking about anything. You just don't want to talk about it. No, but I'm really not thinking anything, so wanting to sit down and have this heart-to-heart talk, my first reaction is, no, I don't want to have that reaction. I don't want to have that talk. Right.
Because usually that talk is about something you don't necessarily want to talk about.
Right.
Okay?
Right. Yeah.
And you're not going to be as forthcoming as they think you ought to be.
Right.
And a lot of times the answers that you give are answers that are true for you, but then there's the other side of that.
Well,
I don't believe you're not telling me the whole story here.
Right.
Yes, I am.
And it's the
that.
interpretation of the answer. You might give an answer that you think is a perfectly reasonable explanation, and the other person thinks that's a terrible answer.
Right. But see, we're back to putting what we think should be on someone else.
Right.
And I think it takes time for people to get comfortable with that.
Right.
And to know one another and going in, recognize that we're different. We approach things differently. We think about things differently. We respond to things differently. We're different, and people don't seem to recognize that. I think of relationships where one person is comfortable being independent and doing their own thing, and there are times when they are with their significant other and it's wonderful, and there are times when they have a personal need for their own personal moment alone without there being anything associated with it. It's just that they need that time.
Right.
And the other person being, well, how can you do that? You're not into me. I am. It's just right now. I just need to be alone.
Right. I need my own space. Right.
And there are too many people that don't recognize that.
Right.
And don't accept it.
And they think that that's a problem.
And it's really
not. It may not even be a problem.
Right.
I know.
But they make it ultimately gets to be a problem because people refuse to accept the fact that I don't need to be covered like a floor 24/7.
Right.
Okay. There are times when, I like that personal interaction, but that there are other times when I just like to be alone with my own thoughts and, not thinking of anything super whatever.
Right. But let me ask you this, is that a problem when if a person, the other way around, the person needs to be with someone 24/7, they need to be in their company? Does that make the person, they'll say needy, or is that it's that if that person is so insecure that they can't be with themselves by themselves,
Right.
they have to be up under somebody else. I mean, is that so? It's not so much it's the problem of the person who needs to be alone, but it's the person who can't stand to be alone with themselves.
Well, see, then we need to get that perfect match.
Mm-hmm.
The person who needs to be needed.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And if you need me all the time, and I need you to need me all the time, that's the match made in heaven.
Yeah,
okay?
That's the perfect match. You're right. You're right. That's a good point. So then you wonder if you're with someone who's the opposite. Well, they say opposites attract, but that's not really. They really complementary people attract, right?
You know, I think in terms of relationships, the relationship that I'm very familiar with, the couple seem to be opposite almost in every way.
Really?
And they were told by a previous counselor that the marriage would never work.
Mm-hmm.
And they were essentially given, like a heads up. Now, if you try this thing,
it's not gonna work.
It's not gonna work.
Right.
Okay. And they've been married for over a quarter of a century.
Right. Right.
Now, why that works, somehow it does.
Right.
And the last time I checked, it seems to be working quite well.
Right.
Okay. But
so there's never, in medicine we say never and never say always. And so when you're giving advice to couples, do you definitely hold some stuff back. You would never say that their relationship wouldn't work. You would probably say their relationship needs work.
No, I wouldn't.
No, you wouldn't?
I would tell them.
Would you?
I've told a couple that. And I'll be honest, it sounds as though I'm bragging, but I'm not. But every couple that I have said that it will not fly, it never got off the ground.
Right, it really did.
Okay, it really didn't.
Yeah. So you can see a dysfunctional couple. What, for example, I know you can talk about anything specific, but what types of things do you see when you say, oh, this isn't going to work?
Okay. I get, well, specifically for me, it is a matter of seeing or identifying deal breakers. People always want to line up with, well, I want this and I want that and I want this and I want that. Okay, so you found the person that meets all of those qualifications. However, you didn't check for the deal breakers. Okay. And it just doesn't work. The example that comes to my mind immediately is a person was an addict. Okay. They were addicted to alcohol. This person had been addicted to alcohol. And it was clear that this person was not really invested in trying to make the change. The other person, on the other hand, was not addicted, wanted specific things, but their heart couldn't identify, didn't look at, it's always, I can make them change or they'll change for me. You don't marry a night owl expecting to make him a homing pigeon. Okay?
Right.
Night owls are night owls. They're night owls.
Right.
Okay?
They're not going to come. So a guy that goes out every night at the clubs and all that is not going to then sit home and watch TV, even though that person typically wants, if they're going to marry someone, they don't want someone that's going to be going out every night in the club because they know what's going on in the club.
Right.
They want someone that's going to stay home, right?
Exactly. Look, like I said, for me, I always tell people, look for the deal breakers. Things that if this is the situation and this comes this way, I'm not going to accept it.
Right.
Right. And that would if a person said, I don't want a philanderer,
Mm-hmm.
okay, and they know this person has been in multiple relationships, and that's been their history over the years. That's not the person you want to pursue.
Right, right,
Okay,
right.
so if you identify deal breakers, I feel you have a better chance of identifying what's not going to work. And if you know it's not going to work, recognize that it's not going to work, and then ask yourself, is this something that you could change on? And if you say, no, you can't,
Right,
don't
right.
expect that they're going to change for you.
Right, right, right. Good point. So now, I mean, this brings up a point when they say meeting people. Like, so if you meet someone in a bar, you've met someone in a bar. You met a
Yes.
bar going person, right?
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like you wouldn't then expect them to stop drinking and stay home. I mean, not that. I mean, there are people that occasionally go to bars and meet people in
Right.
bars, but I'm just saying the best way to meet someone is through a mutual acquaintance. You think, or
The
being
best way to
introduced to
meet
somebody?
the best way to meet people is to meet people.
Mm-hmm.
You can meet people anywhere,
Mm-hmm.
everywhere, at any point in time.
Right.
You can bump into a perfect stranger
Mm-hmm.
in the middle of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
And for whatever reason, that relationship gets a spark
Mm-hmm.
and you decide to investigate one another further. And one thing leads to another. You get to know one another, and it works. And other times you meet that person, and the first impressions are lasting, and this is not going to fly, and it's not going to fly.
Right.
And then it's like uh, traveling on a highway. If you travel on a highway from, let's say, from New York to Los Angeles, there will be people along that highway, whatever highway you take, that will travel with you from one end to the other.
Mm-hmm.
Not likely, but there's probably somebody that can travel with you the entire distance. But there will be many people who will travel with you for a portion of that distance.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to get off, or you're going to get off and get gas and get to eat or whatever, and they're going to go on, and vice versa. Relationships are kind of like that. They grow, and if you feel it's important enough to you, for you to investigate it and make concessions and changes and so forth,
Mm-hmm.
fine, and you'll know if it's worth it or not.
Right.
I've worked with people who the lady's job has her in San Francisco,
Mm-hmm.
and her husband's job was in Washington, D.C.
Two
Now,
ends of the country.
two ends of the country. Now, granted, they're not young people,
Mm-hmm.
but they made it work for them, and they had the means to meet up frequently throughout the month. And every time that they could get close or be close, they worked it out. Now, that wasn't the entirety of their relationship, but it was their relationship for a significant period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And when they moved on to different jobs, they made changes that would, made it work. And, again, it depends upon the value that you as an individual see in the relationship that you're in
Mm-hmm.
terms of how bad do you want to work for it?
Right.
Because that's the bottom line.
That's the bottom line, isn't it? So when you think that people see it as a big, huge failure when a relationship ends, when really you're saying it was just the end of that relationship. They just jumped off of that trip, right? And it's expected, because some people are going to go the whole distance. I've got patients that have been married 50, 60 years. I've got a guy who's married 60 years. Then other ones have been married, 10 years, 10 years, 10 years. And that's because that's how that worked. And they're not necessarily failures in relationships. What you're saying? Is that what you're saying?
Right. Things run their course,
Mm-hmm.
and people change.
Mm-hmm.
needs.
So do people change really at their core?
Of course they do. Needs change.
Mm-hmm.
People outgrow one another. Interests change.
You've seen people outgrow people.
Right.
So and when they outgrow, what does that look like?
It looks like a person, I'm thinking of an individual who is stuck in time and they can't get beyond a particular time in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And the other person has found other interests and has pursued those interests, but the other person cannot make a shift, doesn't want to make a shift, not interested in making a shift.
Right.
And that gets to be somewhat frictional in the sense that, well, you're not spending enough time with me, or you don't spend as much time as you used to spend with me.
Right.
Well, I've moved along from, watching high school basketball.
Right.
Okay? I'm really now into other kinds of things. Their interests and so forth. It's like I said, it's how important is XYZ.
Right. So you could have someone who, I wondered about people that they get together and they smoke pot when they're in their 20s and they laughed and watch movies. Right. They got together, they had kids and they got older, and one of them said, I can't smoke all this pot like I used to. I
need to
support
quit.
the family. Right. But the other person's still smoking pot. And is that like an example of that, or am I making it too simple?
Oh, why people diverge from their previous course can be that simple. You wake up one day and you make a realization that you want other things, you want to do other things.
Right.
Something happens and you make a commitment that I have to change. I think of a situation where I read this lady had been, she had married, family, happily married, everything is going fine. And she happened to be in the Silmar earthquake.
What's that?
In California, there was an earthquake.
Right.
And it was named Silmar.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And it changed her whole outlook. She left her husband, her family, the whole bit. Her mindset was, life is too short. There are things that I want to do, and I'm out of here. Now, there are those who might argue, oh, she wanted to do this all the time. We can't say with any degree of certainty that that's not the case. But reports are her behavior changed markedly after that. I mean, she's in the middle of
so she had like a near-death experience.
Exactly.
And then that woke her up and said, I'm not as happy as I feel like I could be.
Right. And there are things that I want to do. I got to go do this.
Right.
I would say life-threatening experiences changes a whole lot.
Right. But is there like a selfishness associated with that? I mean, if you have a family, you've got kids that, you need to kind of continue. And is there a responsibility? I know there is a responsibility to finish raising your kids before you rush off. And
there's always that aspect. There's always that aspect of selfishness.
Right.
And we don't attend to that enough, and we don't accept responsibility for that enough.
But here's the thing: when you say, I know there are people who say, well, it's two people make a relationship, and it's not all her fault, not all his fault. But in that example with the earthquake, wasn't that all her fault? Them breaking up. Yeah. I mean, he didn't even know he was supposed to be making her happier. You know what I mean?
But all reports, when they investigate, all reports of this were they were perfectly happy.
Mm-hmm.
And that experience changed her outlook on life so much
Mm-hmm.
that it changed her outlook, her thoughts about going forward, what she wanted to do. And, yeah, there's some selfishness to it, but, there's some irrationality to it.
Right.
Because lots of irrationality to it, because you can be as happy as a lark and go to pick out the paper and slip and fall and break your neck,
Right.
just as suddenly.
Right.
So I mean, if you're going to look at it like that, you're going, that's going to change how you act on a day-to-day basis. So yeah, she let that situation get the best of her, and we can't say that it was just totally selfish, but because fortunately I've never had a near-death experience.
Right.
I don't want to have a near-death experience.
Yeah, right. But it will change. It'll definitely change your perspective. That's for sure. So Reggie Blue, if people wanted to contact you or look at you online, do you have any online?
I have a website. Let's Talk, the number 4, REAL. Let's Talk for Real.
Mm-hmm. Let's Talk for Real.
Exactly.
.com, .net.
.com.
Okay.
.com.
Let's Talk for Real.com. Well, that's good. We're doing the same thing right now. We're talking
we're
talking for real.
Yeah. And I think I have an easy phone number,
216-991-3500. So if anyone wants to talk to you, you don't just do relationships, you do all kinds of psychology. You're open and
right.
And again, African American, that's what we do in Better Black Health. We're not that you would discriminate against if a person of another race came, but that's predominantly, like my practice, that's predominantly what you see, right?
Exactly. And if I feel that a person is bringing me a situation that I don't feel comfortable with, I will refer.
Right.
I don't have any problems.
Right.
I am not all knowing.
Right.
Because
but I know that there are people in my practice that say, with your brain and how you look at things and how you feel is very close to the vest. You know what I mean? And they ask me, do you know a Black psychologist? Do you know a Black therapist? Because I don't really feel, particularly Black men, like myself, they want to talk to another Black man because they just feel like that they can open up to them and that they'll understand them, whether their father was home or not. Your odds are you're going to talk to another person whose father may or may not have been home. Or
we're raised differently. Men are raised differently on a whole concept of living and what we're supposed to do and how we're supposed to do it. And we have the same types of breakage rates that everybody else does.
Right. And it's quicker. They can explain their problem a lot quicker to another Black man.
Oh yeah.
You get it quick. It's like, we don't stop there. I know where you're going. I've been there. I know what you're talking about. Well, thanks so much, Dr. Reginald Blue. We'll look for you at talkforreal.com. This is
Let's Talk for Real.
Let's Talk for Real. Let's Talk for Real.com.
And that's number 4.
Yes.
Let's talk
for real. Well, I'm going to put it in the comments below the talk, so you'll be able to hit an hyperlink and go directly to it. This is another episode of Better Black Health, brought to you by Genetic Sequence Multivitamins. The multivitamins made specifically for African American men and women over 50. And you're actually a customer yourself, aren't you?
Yes, I am, and happy to be one.
Absolutely.
Most definitely happy to be one.
Well, thank you very much. Well, take care, Dr. Blue.
Thank you for having me.
None of the statements that I have made have been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. Genetic sequence multivitamins are not intended to treat, cure, or prevent any diseases. Furthermore, none of my statements should be construed as dispensing medical advice or making claims regarding the cure or prevention of diseases. You should consult your own licensed healthcare provider before starting any supplement, diet change, or exercise program. especially if you're pregnant or have pre-existing injuries or medical conditions. Remember, having a doctor is always your best option.